Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Scott Hetzer, owner of Eclipse Fly Company. Scott shares everything from his early fishing memories to the genesis of Eclipse Fly Company to his vision for Eclipse's future. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. But before we move on to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please subscribe in the podcatcher of your choice and leave us a review. It really helps us out. And a shout out to this episode's sponsor. This episode's brought to you by our friends at the Bristol Bay Defense Fund. With the decision on the Pebble Mine's most critical federal permit application due shortly, 2020 is an important turning point in this long-running saga. To help this diverse coalition continue its efforts to protect one of the world's largest wild salmon runs and all of its economic, cultural, and ecological benefits, please visit www.bristolbaydefensefund.com and donate today. Now, on to the interview. Well, Scott, welcome to The Articulate Fly.
Thanks for having me, Marvin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and we have a tradition on The Articulate Fly. We always ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Sure. So it would have been a long, long time ago, far before I had any idea that I would be professionally involved in the industry. But way back as a kid, just near the Rappahannock River on the Caratum, and I used to go there a bunch as a kid. And, classic thing, digging up worms out of the garden, throwing them on a hook, and probably not catching anything, but still, realizing that there's something cool about it. And I guess that kind of planted a seed that sprouted perhaps a decade later, but I'm glad it did.
Very neat. And when did you get pulled to the dark side of fly fishing?
Oh, gosh, that would have been about a little over a decade ago. I would say when I was 14. Got really lucky. I mean, I feel really fortunate that my folks started a vacation in Bath County, Virginia, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And that's obviously an awesome spot to start an angling career. And really, I mean, I don't know how it all happened, but, the homestead is prominent there, and they do, guided trips and stuff like that, but also clinics. And my parents heavily insisted on me taking a casting clinic. And I remember being somewhat, it just didn't really strike me as something that I wanted to do. And for whatever reason, they kind of, pressed me on it, and went down there and started casting, and thought the $2 cast was exactly on point with what, I was supposed to be learning. And really just from that point on, I haven't looked back.
Very neat. And as you kind of proceeded down the road on your fly fishing journey, who are some of the people that mentored you in the sport?
I got two, and really lucky for those two, because my fly fishing experience has been pretty solitary. I haven't had many people, but up there in Hot Springs, a gentleman who we were referred to take us, my dad and I, fishing, a gentleman by the name of Jim Taylor was my first real, instructor and mentor. And we still are in contact to this day. And, that's a pretty, holds a special place for me. Someone that really, kind of set me on that path. So he really lit, got the torch going for me. And then, my supervisor at the homestead, Matt Thomas, he really took it to the next level, and, that coincided with guiding. And boy, he really taught me how to do it, how to teach people, and, how to extract value from it. So those two guys for sure really, made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, very neat. And when did you get the fly tying bug?
Pretty late, actually. I had even started guiding, and it was soon after guiding, but I think I just had one too many clients ask me if I tied flies, and it felt awful to respond that, oh, no, I haven't gotten into it yet. And even when, the client is into fly tying, I just felt like, a well-rounded angler and guide, should have that knowledge. So that really, kind of forced me to start tying.
Got it. And who are some of the folks that influenced you as you learned how to tie flies?
So I'm really pretty self-taught. I'm a child of YouTube, so that was a huge thing. He doesn't know who I am, but Tim Flagler, Tightline Productions, certainly made a huge impression. I even, thinking back about it, I have a very distinct memory of watching his woolly bugger tutorial, which of course is everybody's entry point. And there's this one scene in that video where it cuts away from his commentary and interludes, some cool music. And at that moment, I have it seared into my brain. I couldn't get over how cool I thought it was. And that really, if I have a mentor in that, it's a virtual one, but one that made a huge, huge difference for me.
Yeah, absolutely. He puts out really amazing stuff, and some of his live streaming stuff he's been doing during the COVID pandemic has been really, 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 really neat too.
Yeah, he's a whiz with the technology too, which I'm learning is, there's quite a learning curve with that stuff as well. So I've learned to really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the first vise you ever tied on?
I think that I had, one of those Orbis tying kits that everyone starts out with. So whatever, couldn't tell you what model it was, anything like that. Just a black vise that had the clamp that you put on the side of the desk and worked for a while. And I'm only on my second vise, so they hold up.
You remember the first pattern you tied on it?
Yeah, woolly bugger for sure.
Very neat. And so what do you tie on today?
I tie on my trusty Peak rotary vise.
Got it. And do you actually use the rotary feature?
I actually don't use it all that much. I'm kind of a fan of really, controlling every aspect of, each part of the fly. And I find that not all the time, but if I can manually control something, then I will. And oftentimes, unless it's completely necessary, I won't use that rotary function quite as much.
Yeah, got it. And before you founded Eclipse Fly Co., you were a guide. How did you get into the guide game?
That was like I was mentioning earlier, kind of, just luck of the draw with finding myself spending a lot of time up in Bath County and being close to the Homestead Resort. So I guess late in high school, just kind of picked up a job working for them, doing their, as an outdoor activities guide, taking people down the Jackson River and, unfortunately also doing the Segway tours, which were actually pretty treacherous. But, kind of just got my foot in the door there and was able to prove myself as a worthy employee. And then, always just knew that they had fly fishing there. And I really wasn't even, I was into it for sure, but not to the extent of it being where I derive my purpose in life from. But I just, the opportunity arose after like 2 years of working there. And yeah, it was really quite the experience. I think I learned, more than just fishing lessons doing that. I think it really kind of influenced a lot of how I approach things in life.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned the gentleman that ran the fly fishing program at the Homestead as a mentor earlier on in the interview. Are there any other folks that have helped you on your guide journey?
Yeah, it was a small operation. The camaraderie was there, and I certainly derived a lot of information from the other people involved. But really, for the most part, it was like a 3 or 4 man operation. So really, like I say, it was pretty solitary pursuit of mine. I was lucky to have those guys though, for sure.
Got it. And I always ask all of my my guide guests to share what they think the biggest misconception folks have about the life of a fishing guide.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I it stands out. I was listening to the podcast you did. The name slips me at the moment, but it was with a gentleman from Susquehanna River Guides.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure, this is the, common answer, but that it's not, you don't get into it to to go fishing yourself. It's more about, the education side of it and, really the value that you can get from introducing people particularly to the sport. So really, I mean, it's just a matter of, helping people fish as opposed to you fishing. A good guide is gonna, observe and let you have your space and interject where necessary, but you're letting them do their thing and leaving your, all of your ideologies at the door and just, helping people. That's really what it's all about.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And so, you started fly fishing, you kind of picked up fly tying after the fact when you were guiding, and I guess you said sort of felt bad about not tying. What made you decide to make the jump into production tying?
That was really out of necessity. I did kind of find that, there were a couple of reasons that guiding in that current situation wasn't going to work out long term. The allure of living in a county that doesn't have a single stoplight did kind of start to wane after a little bit. And of course, the seasonal nature of it. I'm not really an itinerant person, so the lifestyle of, guiding one place in the, on season in our hemisphere and then going somewhere else for the rest, that really didn't appeal to me. So, but I knew that I had to be in the fishing industry, and I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I figured that, this is something that I can do, and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well, and create the job that I want.
And so as you kind of made that transition into production tying, what was the biggest surprise or adjustment for you?
That would have had to have been how physically demanding it was. I don't think I really appreciated what it's like to sit behind a vise for extended amounts of time, and long durations and day after day after day. Really figuring out how I can, kind of mold the rest of my life so that I can keep that going. Because it did get to a point where, for the first, year and a half, it was, extreme discomfort all the time, to the point where there was even like early on when I really first started, full-time, 7 days a week tying, went into like a full state of spasm and was bedridden for like 3 days. So that was a huge surprise to me, is that I would have to really, kind of make some lifestyle changes to maintain that level of production. And luckily I have kind of worked it out. There's certainly, better days than some, but yeah, that was a huge challenge, honestly. Figuring out how to make that work, because there were certainly times where I felt like, gosh, if this keeps going, I don't know if I can keep sitting behind the vise, for this amount of time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before. And, one thing that was kind of interesting, I was really curious about when I was doing the research for this interview, was how you came up with the name for your business.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting one. And if you don't mind me trying to explain, it's kind of, it's a little weird, but, I've always kind of had a fascination with the cosmos. And I've always kind of felt like the order of the universe kind of replicates itself in different scales. And I kind of started to see that, especially in the world that we're involved in fly fishing, particularly very, very small stuff. And that always, things would just over time kind of pop up and be like, hey, I've heard astrophysicists talk about stuff that seems relatable to what I'm seeing here. One of those being staring a trout in the eye and realizing that it almost perfectly resembles an eclipse. And that was just one of my shower thoughts, where one day I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I think I can, run with that name. And I'm sure glad I did.
Very neat. And why don't you share with our listeners what makes Eclipse special?
Yeah, so a couple of things. And really, one thing that stood out to me in listening to you in the past, I distinctly remember you talking about a big part of the Articulate Fly was, to create a community of anglers and to get people involved in the sport. And that's really, really what I'm all about with Eclipse. I deliberately use the word inclusive on the front page of my website, mostly because, my main objective is to create a positive consumer experience, not only for experienced anglers, but particularly for those who are new to the sport, and really just kind of drive home the message that, you're welcomed in this community, and especially if you're new. I want to help you, and I want to make sure that your entry to the sport is as seamless as possible, because I'm sure you know as well as I do, fly fishing, people have a tendency to really overcomplicate things, and that has its merits for sure. It can just be very intimidating at the start, and even myself, having been in the game for a little bit, I still feel intimidated all the time. So it's really just about, doing everything I can to create a positive experience for people and help people along. I feel like it's one of those things where, a lot of people, don't want you to blow up the spot, or, people are hesitant to get people into the sport because they're worried about, overcrowding. And certainly that's an issue, but I think it's a matter of strength in numbers. And particularly when you, consider it's a lot of times an issue of, protecting our natural resources. I think that strength in numbers is a huge, is going to be a huge thing going forward. So, whatever I can do to, get people into the sport and create more, advocates for the environment, that's huge for me.
Yeah, I think you really can't place a price, whether someone tries fly fishing or some other outdoor activity and they stay with it or not. I don't think we really appreciate how valuable it is for people to have positive experiences. So to your point, when there's a resource issue or an access issue, they feel motivated to take action.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this might get a little rambly. I hope that's okay. But going back to talking about guiding, one thing that really, really stuck out to me, and is the reason that I'm still in the game today, I think, I was lucky enough to get kind of on the, conservation train early on in high school, and continued that through college, not really knowing how or what I was going to do to make the difference that I wanted to. And it kind of just fell into my lap with guiding. A lot of what we were doing at the homestead was, taking people who had never touched a fly rod before, because it was just another activity at the resort. And seeing the reaction that people had, of course, people talk all the time about, you see the fire lit when people catch their first trout. And I'm a huge believer that, if you have a connection to your place, you're going to be, far more inclined to, speak out for it. So it really, it checks all the boxes for me, for sure.
Very neat. And so I know that it's, you're the owner and the sole employee at Eclipse. What does a day at the company look like for you?
I can tell you very specifically, actually, because I'm an extremely routine-driven individual. So, and really part of that is the consistency that I like to offer. So I really try to make sure that, I know exactly what I'm doing that day and what I need to do, so that I can make sure that there's no, nothing that falls under the radar. So, wake up early, 7, cup of coffee, consume some sort of media, whether that, while I'm waking up, usually something fly fishing related, if I find something good. And then 8 o'clock, that's when I kick it into high gear. And it's different most days. Some days it's, kind of prepping orders, or prepping shipments rather, for the day, or, kind of looking at what I have from the, the night before, or the previous day that I have to tie that day, or how I can expedite that process. Sometimes it's materials prep. Other times it's, sending newsletters, and always responding to customers in the morning. And then about 9 o'clock, that's when I start cranking the flies out. And I will do that simultaneously while, responding to inquiries, talking to people, helping people along, and do that all day. And then come 4 o'clock, the thousands of thread wraps kind of start to wear on you a little bit. So that's when I kind of stand up and try to do something active and, kick off the cobwebs, come back inside, finish up if I haven't, hit my 5 dozen daily quota. And that's usually about, 6 o'clock. And then that's when the second job starts, and I start, cleaning up the desk, getting ready to, take photographs or record a video and get something out on social media just to, stay engaged with the community. And then I try to pry myself away from the phone for the rest of the night, but I do often find myself, working with people, helping people out. So it's really, I find myself working quite a lot. I think that's definitely necessary with what I want to achieve and, the standard that I hold myself to. So yeah, it's pretty standard. I've got it pretty dialed in at this point. And actually, going back to what you said, I did start Eclipse, but I actually do have, I'm working with some people now, which is really awesome, helping me kind of expand my catalog. So I've been working with one guy consistently who's kind of my streamer guy. But as of now, I've actually, started working with 4 other people, which is great. And I think that's, for the time being, how I'll kind of, work going forward.
Got it. And so you got a streamer guy. What do the other folks do for you?
So those are more in the trial runs. And I'm starting out with some people, so it's we're kind of ironing things out. But I'm going to have a guy, try to hit that, west of the 100th meridian market. They like to fish really, really small stuff. And I'm happy tying that stuff, but I feel, I just try to stick to my lane and do what I know best and what I can, make sure that the quality is, top notch. So I've got a guy who's really a midge expert. I've got another guy in Georgia who's a master of the Houdini weaving method. So bring some unique flies to the shop, and then one other guy, and kind of just trying that one out too. But he does like some cool articulated stuff, so I thought that'd be neat to bring in some bigger stuff as well.
Yeah, very cool. And so, how many days a week do you tie? 6 or 6? Do you take a day off?
No, never. I could. I'm totally addicted to it, and I feel like I'm kind of in a mad dash to, achieve as much as I can in a short amount of time, just to give myself the best chances of staying in this industry. So really, it takes a lot. I probably, 70 hours a week is standard, and might take a day off. I don't know, like once every other month or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's cutting into your fishing time for sure then.
That's all right. I got plenty of people out there who are helping me test, and I get to get some of that satisfaction vicariously with, all the feedback and pictures that I get. So it's cool for now. And I think I cashed in on my time up in the mountains too. So I could stand to do something else for a little bit, but I am excited to get back to it for sure.
Got it. And I noticed looking at your website, it seems like you have a focus on Euro nymphing or competitive nymphing patterns. And I was curious about what drew you to that part of the angling community.
I always fished Euro nymphs. That was, I was just a huge fan of that in my own experience. But really, when it comes down to selling flies, I started out certainly not selling a lot of Euro nymphs. It was a lot of stuff all over the board, and I kind of just let the market tell me where to go. And that's clearly the trend right now. And I'm not scared to change when the trend goes another direction. But for now, that's what the people want. So that's what I'm, doing the most of.
Got it. And so in your prior Eclipse life, did you fish competitively at all, or was it just the way you kind of like to fish for yourself and for your clients?
No, I never got into the competitive world. I have a lot of appreciation for those guys, for sure. Guys and gals, they take fishing to a whole new level. And yeah, I feel like had I had the opportunity, I think that would have been cool, but no, I never did. And I'm okay with that.
Got it. And, it looked like, kind of looking at your site, it looks like you tie traditional styles, but you kind of put your own stamp on them. Am I kind of right in reading that? That you kind of create your own stuff, and that you're not, for example, tying generic patterns like here are hare's ear jigs or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do try to, put my twist on things anywhere I can. And it's constantly evolving. I have my staple patterns that stay in the shop. And then I kind of let feedback and the trends tell me where to go. And I just, it's constantly evolving. So as time goes on, it certainly becomes more and more original. And I do, in my evolution of fly development, hope to be, completely doing my own original stuff. But certainly, there's patterns that have those keywords and they are bulk of what people are buying. So, I do try to stay true to what people are buying and then, also kind of expand and offer something new as well.
So you're getting feedback from customers and I guess some of that can be general or specific. Scott, how does that feedback translate its way onto the hook for you?
So I really, just try to pay attention to what people are going with. And sometimes I'll get, requests and, I'll start using a new material and then, that's where it all begins. You start using a material, see what it, wants you to do with it and just start, creating stuff from there, see how it works, see what people like. And oftentimes it's, go crazy, put 3 new patterns up of similar kind and see which one sticks, which one doesn't, go with that one. And then, kind of just all evolves over time.
Yeah. And you've got a really, really well done Instagram page. And I imagine you probably get a fair amount of feedback from Instagram on your patterns too.
Absolutely. Yeah. That community is hugely valuable to me. There are some incredible people out there doing awesome work. And they've certainly helped me along. And yeah, just, feedback in general, you can kind of tell when you get used to certain levels of engagement and things really, pop out like, oh, wow, that people really seem to like that one. Let's, give it a try in the shop and see what they think there. And, things surprise you for sure, but, the stakes aren't too high either. I tie things that I know will catch fish. And so really it's just a matter of, what people are most interested in. That's what I roll with.
Got it. And what are some of the challenges that you face as a production tyer?
Not a lot. I've honestly found it, I've worked super, super hard, but I found it not as hard as I thought to get to a point where I'm doing it full time. I think a big challenge of it is the perception of it, especially outside of the industry, but, dealing with, old sentiments that, if, you hear a lot of times, oh, you're never going to get rich tying flies. And to a certain extent that might be true. But just, some of the attitudes that go along with this pursuit, I'm sure it's true of any pursuit, but, just staying focused on what I know is working and what my customers enjoy. And yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And, I always ask, I've been lucky enough to have several production tyers on the podcast. I'm always interested in, getting you to share tips that you kind of learn when you tie thousands of flies with what I call us regular fly tyers. And so I was wondering if you had 3 tips you could share from your production tying world for our listeners.
Yeah, I can certainly give you some tips. And this one doesn't really relate to the commercial tying, but it stays true to this, to, whatever level you take it. But the phrase really sticks out to me that I don't know where I heard it, but the idea that fish can't count. So, you just don't have to worry that much that, it can just be your own experience. It's an artistic pursuit. And, it's just, even to the extent that I'm doing it, it's just, about having fun. So to all the regular tyers, it's just a matter of doing what you enjoy and, don't let other people tell you what you're doing is wrong or how to do it differently. Just, put the blinders on, focus what works for you and what makes you happy doing it. That's a huge thing. And that's kind of been a challenge for me, but, But yeah, and other than that, a big one for me is, and it really is true when you start to tie flies in the, thousands of, thousands of flies a month range. You start to really learn the materials. And it's a little bit like fishing, a good angler will be observant and let the fish tell you what to do. And I've certainly found, doing it this much, that is absolutely the case with materials as well. Materials will point you in the right direction, and just let them tell you how they want to be worked. And oftentimes that'll open up avenues that that if you were trying to force something you didn't even realize were there. That's, I think, really all I got for you.
No, that's all good. And it's interesting. I think I know the answer to this question based on our conversation before we started recording, but what's one tying tool that might be a little unusual that you can't live without?
Oh man, I'm super standard. I don't have a lot of the fancy bells and whistles that a lot of people have. I actually, compared to a lot of tires, my setup is pretty small. What I do use, I have an obscene amount of. But I'm using pretty basic stuff, to tell you the truth. You don't have to get too crazy, but one thing that I find myself using all the time is just like a needlepoint bodkin. That thing, for whatever reason, seems to just always crop up, and I'm always using that thing. And oftentimes I have to, go into another room in the house looking for it, because it also is very useful in other things, not fly tying related.
Got it. And what do you use it for mostly when you tie?
I use it mostly for resin application. I find that I just have a lot more control, with being able to, select the exact right amount of resin that I want for that, whatever I'm doing. And just allows me to be a lot, more fine-tuned, especially with the resins.
Got it. And I know that you don't sell tying materials, but I also know that you pretty regularly put out tying videos in your social media feeds. How does that sharing of tying videos help your fly business? Because it seems to me like you could kind of look at it and it's kind of a neat thing to do, but you're selling flies, so maybe you don't want to show people how to tie flies.
Oh yeah. I mean, that just really, I think with that more than anything, I'm just sending a message that this is for everyone. I'm not one to, not tell people of a fishing spot or how to do, some certain, trick in tying. It affords me the ability to show that, I'm intent on being transparent with what I do.
Very neat. Got it. And, you shared with us earlier in the interview that you actually are working on partnering with some other tires, which is, I know, news since you and I spoke in Virginia at the Virginia Fly Fishing and Wine Festival. Do you have any other developments on the horizon at Eclipse that you want to share with our listeners?
Boy, it's hard to say. This is pretty relatively new. I'm super fortunate to experience pretty rapid growth. So it's really hard to say where it'll go. I've certainly got my ideas, and I might naively be shooting too high, but I've got, pretty lofty goals with this. And we'll see. I'd really love to offer a platform for people that aren't quite in the situation of being able to, tackle it as a full-time pursuit, but, are looking to get into the game and, just give people a platform that, they can have an opportunity to sell their flies. And that for me, if you don't mind me kind of going on a tangent about that, is a really important point about that. That platform aspect of it for me is really big, because I do think that the commercial fly tying model is subject to change, especially now with the way that we have changed with, just the last few years with social media and the ease of access that we have to pursuing something on our own. And I think there is a new opportunity to, help people along who are, like I say, looking to get into the game. It's really hard with the standard model to be a commercial fly tyer, typically selling to shops, all the while competing with, the other flies in the shop that are commercially produced for an extremely low cost. I get emails every week, people in other countries offering to sell me flies for, $3 a dozen. So it's really hard in the old model, I think, to make it happen. And I just think that this new approach has a lot of potential. And so I invite people to, reach out if you are willing to stand up to my level of scrutiny. I'd love to work with people and just expand this thing in any way I can and solve for the problem of, people not really being able to pursue commercial fly tying as a career. It's doable, but it is very hard. And I think it's changing. So it's all good.
Got it. And so what is the best way for folks to kind of keep up with you and everything that's going on at Eclipse?
I'd say social media is the best. I'm very responsive on, any platform. But that's a great place. I'm a habitual checker of my phone for, I say it's for business reasons, but it's probably more than that. But yeah, that's an awesome place to reach out. I'll get back to you literally right away. And I'm always looking to talk too. I wish people made phone calls more these days.
Yeah. Well, why don't you share your phone number, your website address, and your social media handles for folks? Sure.
So, Instagram is, at Eclipse Flyco, eclipseflyco.com. That's my, website. And other than that, you can, call me up anytime. My phone number is 804-380-9769.
Very cool. And I'll drop all that and your social media handles in the show notes. And Scott, I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time in between your first job of the day and your second job of the day to talk with me.
Well, man, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
No, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.
You too. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please subscribe in the podcatcher of your choice and leave us a review. It really helps us out. And again, a shout out to this episode's sponsor, our friends at the Bristol Bay Defense Fund. Go to www.bristolbaydefensefund.com and donate today. Tight lines, everybody.